dear listener. Iain Lee, BBC Three Counties Radio. It's brilliant well, I say it's brilliant sunshine out there. It's bright, it's light. It was light. What time did I see the sunrise? At about 4:30 it was bright. Driving up the M1, wonderful. You'd have thought it was nearly spring. Lots coming up on the show this morning, as always. Love to get your opinion on some of these stories. Very feisty show this morning. I suspect there may be arguments. Male prisoners should work harder for their privileges. The government's introducing the new changes from November. What incentives do you think prisoners should be allowed to earn? Do you think prisoners have it too easy? Love to hear your opinion if you've been in prison. If you just watch from the outside and think, oh, for goodness sakes, what's going on there? As you heard in the news, it all kicked off at a council meeting in Luton last night. This is because parents were unhappy about free transport to faith schools being cut. Our reporter Lorna Hankin was there and witnessed all the shouting in the public gallery. And we'll find out how you can follow someone else's hip operation that's taking place at a Hertfordshire hospital live on your computer. Oh, dear. I say, oh, dear, actually, I'm morbidly intrigued by this. You can get in touch, facebook.com/BBC3CR. You can send me a text, 81333. But as always, the best way to get in touch is via the email. Not the email, what am I talking about? The telephone. Sorry, I'm thinking because I've got to email a gentleman in America. Oh, dear me, it's going to be one of those days, isn't it? 08459 455 555. I can only apologise.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
I've turned into a Wally Webb. The government's announced a new scheme to make male prisoners work harder for privileges. From November, inmates will wear a uniform for 2 weeks and have restricted access to cash and television. The Justice Secretary, Chris Grayling, says he wants them to earn rewards by taking part in work, education and rehabilitation. Our reporter Justin Dealey has been to Bovingdon in Hertfordshire, where they have the Mount Prison, and he asked people what privileges prisoners deserve. This is what they said.
Well, it's supposed to be prison, isn't it? They should go in there, they should have, well, not necessarily porridge like I used to get, but, they should have just the basic things which they need, a toilet, a bed. But they don't have DVDs, pool, Sky, the privilege of using phones.
None. They've lost their benefits when they either break in or do robbery or cause trouble.
Well, I can't swear, can I?
No, you can't.
Nothing. No, why? They've committed a crime. We're, the taxpayers, etc., are paying for them to be put up in a hotel, which Joey has called it, and it is a hotel. Bits and pieces that I haven't even got at home, and I work. So why should they be given that?
So they shouldn't be entitled to absolutely anything apart from the basics?
Nope.
I think they should have basic rights, human rights, and vary it according to the severity of the crime.
So if somebody goes in for shoplifting, should they be entitled to a television or a PlayStation?
Yeah.
But the higher the crime, again, they've got to get stuff.
Absolutely.
If you've got a prisoner that's in there for murder, rape, paedophiles, or whatever you want to call it, they should have no privileges whatsoever. I just don't agree with anything at all. They should be not made to suffer, because that's ridiculous, but I think they should definitely, they're in there for a punishment, and that's it. Total punishment.
Well, that was people speaking to our reporter Justin Dealey, who I have to confirm has never done any bird whatsoever. Steve Cattell lives in Hertfordshire. The last time he was arrested, he'd just committed 16 burglaries in 4.5 hours. At that time, he was one of Britain's most persistent criminals. He's since turned his life around. Morning, Steve.
Good morning.
Steve, what do you make of some of these changes?
It's a very difficult question, because basically the changes really were instigated through the riots within the prison system, because people were locked up 23 hours a day through lack of work within the prison system. I don't see any change in that. There don't seem to be as much work in the prison system. Therefore, what they gave them was a TV to actually while the 23 hours a day behind their door away.
So things like the Sky Sports, this is according to the front page of the Mail, Sky Sports and rated DVDs will no longer be available just for being good. You'll have to earn them.
Yeah, well, I think it's absolutely, I'm with every person that just had their own comments. I think having Sky and DVDs and walking around in if you can afford it, the drug dealers that go in there, the high profile criminals that go in there, having £200 or £300 pairs of trainers walking around, with £700 or £800 worth of gold around their neck it's just ridiculous. But
so you agree that then with these changes that prisoners should have to earn the right to watch Sky TV. They should earn the right to wear what they want.
Should have Sky TV.
Sorry?
I don't think they should have Sky TV
at all.
No.
Even if they work hard and go on rehabilitation programmes?
No, because the rehabilitation programmes then would just be a carrot. You go on our programmes, we'll give you a TV. You go on our programmes, we'll actually subscribe you to Sky TV. They're not going on them programmes because they want to go on them programmes to change their lives and become a model citizen when they're released. They're going on there because they're getting rewarded for something within the prison system. Well, we can all do that.
What privileges did you have in prison, Steve?
I basically... on my last sentence, yes, I had all of the privileges that they still have got basically now in prison.
And what effect did those privileges have on you?
The TV drove me mad. I just wished they'd took my television away.
Could you not turn it off?
Yeah, I could do. Then I could hit my cellmate with a bucket.
Sorry?
I could hit my cellmate with a bucket.
Why would you do that?
Well, because he wouldn't want the TV taken away.
So he wanted the TV on. And
you don't want the TV on. You want to read a book. You can't read a book because he's watching telly. You want to go to sleep. He wants to watch a late film.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
well, that's a punishment in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, the main focus that Mr. Grayling, who has no idea whatsoever of the prison system, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he was just basically, I think, a kind of lackey for work and pensions department and doesn't understand the prison and the justice system whatsoever. What they need to be focusing on is if this programme that they have on BBC, I think it is, which is called Prisoners, that every single prisoner seems to be highlighting one thing, is when they go out, they've got nowhere to live. And when they go out and they've got nowhere to live, they steal or to go back to prison, rather than sleep on a park bench or in a very cold shop doorway.
So just finally, Steve, you're suggesting that some people, they choose to go to prison because actually it's better than being outside?
Because the focus in prison should be on rehabilitation, but you should have the full backup programme when they're released.
Steve, thank you very much indeed. That's Steve Cattell, lives in Hertfordshire, was at one point one of Britain's most persistent criminals. So what do you think, dear listener? Do prisoners have it too easy? What do you think? Hang on a second. We can't go back to the Victorian times. We can't act like the Nazis. We have to give them something. And yes, they should have Sky Sports. They should have their PlayStations. It's only PlayStation 2, by the way. So what do you think? Prisoners, do they have it too easy? Do you agree with these changes that are coming into place? They'll be denied access to Sky Sports and mucky movies. And then they'll no longer win privileges simply for keeping out of trouble. Now, it all kicked off at a meeting in Luton last night. It's all because free transport for faith schools is to be scrapped. Pupils and parents started jeering from the public gallery of the town hall when the Borough Council announced their decision. Members of the executive walked out, refusing to return until they left the building. Well, Lorna Hankin, our reporter, was there. Lorna, this sounds very exciting. What happened?
Yeah, well, there was over 100 parents and pupils were gathered outside the town hall for this meeting. They were chanting, they were holding banners. A lot of the people there were affiliated with Cardinal Newman Roman Catholic School. The meeting started. The hundreds of kids filled the public gallery all with their posters. We heard from 2 parents and a head teacher as to why they wanted to keep the transport, but the executive voted against them. The decision was made quite quickly, and the leader of the Labour-run Borough Council, Hazel Simmons, moved on to the next item of the agenda. And it kind of took a while for people to realise exactly what had happened.
Is there anybody else from the executive who wishes to comment? No? The recommendation is report before you. Remember, they're very clear what the recommendation is. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. We haven't heard. What is it? Do we get the buses or do we not get the buses? No, we don't get the buses. So we don't get the buses. So I've explained right at the beginning of the meeting how the process was going to work. But you didn't listen to a word they said. You only understand the track colour. This report is before members. Are there any questions on this report from other members of the executive? What about the buses? There's a question. That report is therefore before members. Is it agreed? Thank you very much.
Wow.
Yeah.
It got very exciting, didn't it? Obviously, a lot of angry people there. Why do they feel so passionately about this?
Well, parents say it's about religion, costs, safety and broken promises. Now, when Cardinal Newman Catholic School was first built, there was a promise that free transport would always be provided to and from the school. The parents also argue that when Labour wanted to get into power in Luton, they said it would retain this, and now that they're in power, they've gone back on their word. There's also the argument that it discriminates against them because of their religion, because they want their child to go to a Catholic secondary school, and this is the only one in the town, that they have no choice but to get a bus to get there. They worry about their kids' safety because without the bus, they're going to have to walk to town to get to 2 public buses there, so there's a safety concern. And of course there is the cost. It's going to be about £600 per year per child, and although low income families will get it free, it's only going to apply to parents who earn a joint income of less than £16,000 a year. That's quite low, which means many working parents like Melissa Conroy will not fit that criteria.
In September now, my daughter will start Cardinal Newman. We live in Houghton Regis, but now how does myself, a single mum of 3 children, pay now for school meals, which currently cost £18 a week, on top of bus fares to go from Houghton Regis? There's no direct bus that's going to take her to Cardinal Newman. And for the fact of I'm a working single mum, I'm not entitled to nothing. To me, it's so important for my children to go to school in our faith. But I've got 2 other children. My youngest is 4. By the time he reaches of a high school age, Cardinal Newman, sadly, I don't feel, will no longer be a Catholic school, because Catholic parents who live even further out than me, there is no possible way they can afford to send 1, 2, 3, 4 children so far on buses on a daily basis.
These kids are age 11 upwards?
Yes, yeah.
I used to get buses from the age of 11 to school, and I grew up in Slough, which is...
rougher than Luton?
It's Slough then, yes, it was quite rough. It definitely was rough back in the 80s when I was getting buses to school, so...
Because the parents I spoke to, they were worried about their kids being on their own, that they've got to walk to the bus stop, that they've got to get the public transport bus, they've got further to go, and also it's going to be something like 2 buses, so it's not like a direct bus there either. So that was a concern over their safety in particular.
What do you think? Oh, dear listener, 08459 455 555. Am I being a little bit cold and harsh here? I used to get buses to school when I was 11, and it was in Slough, which back then was horrible. It's a lot nicer now, I'm assured, but it was rough then. Am I being a little bit insensitive? 08459 455 555. What did the council say?
Well, Luton Borough Council argue it will save them over £760,000 to get rid of the free bus services, and that would be from September this year and then go over the next 2 school years. They're offering up an additional £420,000 to be split between those schools affected to make up for it. But the parents I spoke to said that doesn't interest them. It doesn't solve the problem of them getting that bus, and also that the money won't last. Now, they issued a statement after the meeting saying, "We are fortunate that we live in a democracy."
Oh, one of those, OK.
Where everyone has the right to protest, and at the executive meeting, parents, children, residents and school representatives exercised that right.
However, jog on. We're not changing.
We will endeavour to work with the school, young people, parents and bus operators to secure the best possible solution. Leader of the Labour-run Borough Council, Hazel Simmons, has promised to come on this programme after 7 this morning to explain more, but she has previously told us in the past that It's simply about them having to save money somewhere.
The council has to make significant cuts that have been imposed upon them by the government, 49 million over the next 3 years, and we agreed at the start of this process we would look at all areas of service that the council does, and we spend about £1 million on home to school transport, not just denominational, but across all the school transports, and we're having to look at reducing some of the costs of that.
So Hazel Simmons is coming on after 7, is she?
Yes.
Do you want to get your questions to her? If you were there last night, if you want to speak to her, 08459 455 555. Give us a call now, and we'll put you through to Hazel after 7. Lorna, what happens now?
Well, the decision, it seems like it's been made, but what happened has left a lot of parents more angry, because the noise erupted. All the members of the executive, apart from Labour councillor Tom Shaw and the Liberal Democrat Martin Pantlin, basically all walked out of the meeting, and they refused to come back in until all the parents and the pupils left.
Wow.
So they kind of feel like they haven't been able to put their questions to them, haven't got the response they were looking for. They stayed around for another 20 minutes. The chanting carried on, but then they dispersed. The executive did come back in and carried on as if nothing had happened. They started eating Maltesers, by the way. A man did start shouting. He was saying that they were a disgrace, that this wasn't democracy. He was escorted quietly out, and the meeting carried on.
Do we live in North Korea or something? What's going on?
Head teacher of Cardinal Newman School, Jane Crowe, and parent Laura Wilkinson both spoke at the meeting last night, and this was their reaction to what happened.
It just seems as if they'd already made up their minds, hadn't they? They didn't really want to listen to us, so I can understand why everybody's so very disappointed.
Got a lot of support here today. You can hear them. The council members have just walked out. What do you think to that?
I just think it's absolutely disgusting, to be honest. They haven't listened to a word we've said. They haven't listened to any of the evidence. They had their mind made up months ago what they were going to do. We're so disappointed, and now they just get up and walk away like they always do.
Lorna, I know you put on... This went on for ages, this meeting, didn't it, last night?
Yes, it did. It did go on for a while.
Thank you very much
right.
for doing it. I appreciate you coming
No
in. Well,
worries.
you've heard... If you feel you didn't get your say last night, Hazel Simmons is coming on. You can have your say this morning. 08459 455 555. What do you want to put to Hazel Simmons?
Across beds, hearts and bucks, this is Iain Lee on BBC Three Counties Radio.
It's a very feisty show this morning, a lot of anger. Don't forget, Hazel Simmons will be on this show after 7 o'clock this morning. If you were at the protests last night, or the meeting, and part of the protest for the... regarding the getting rid of the free school transport for Cardinal Newman School, could you give me a call? 08459 455 555, and you can speak to Hazel and put your point to her. Also, I used to get the bus to school when I was 11. That was quite a distance, and it involved a lot of walking, a lot of busing, and going through Slough, which in the 80s was flippin' horrible. Is it really such a big thing? I'd like to hear your journeys to school stories, please. 08459 455 555. Other things coming up include a new £22 million redevelopment in Milton Keynes to move the National Badminton Centre to the National Bowl has been given the thumbs up. But not everybody is happy about it. Some residents, here we go, heckled councillors and shouted lies at a meeting last night. We'll find out why. Very aggressive lots of you in the Three Counties last night. Well done. And we'll find out how you can watch someone else's hip operation taking place at a Hertfordshire hospital live on your computer. Wowzers. The new £22 million redevelopment in Milton Keynes to move the National Badminton Centre to the National Bowl was last night given the go-ahead. To fund the building, more than 100 homes will be built on the site of the current badminton centre in Loughton. Well, some residents heckled and shouted lies when the plans were discussed at last night's development meeting. Our reporter Jessica Cooper was there and spoke to some residents afterwards.
Although I'm happy for the new centre, that's a good development, I'm very much against the impact it will have on the local residents with respect to traffic, noise, and the spoiling of a beautiful area.
And why didn't you want this development to go ahead?
I back up everything that she said, and we are not against development, and if the badminton centre can progress and become a real national event, then good. But an awful lot is conditional on that. But what is wrong is that it's conditional on being the housing development is conditional upon that being built. until all the other facilities didn't seem to be mentioned, that 100 houses will impact on schools, doctors. I know one of the objectors said, but that seemed to have got lost very easily. All the auxiliary things that go along with 100 plus houses.
There was quite a lot of heckling in the public gallery. People were really quite annoyed, weren't they, about this? Is that what the feeling's like in Loughton?
I think generally that is the feeling, isn't it? We are not against progress, and I don't think that we object to everything that's proposed at all. In fact, we belong to a group of people that work in the community to improve and make the community nice and a good place to live in. So we're not against that at all.
I'm joined by two people now. Alex Regan is chairman of the residents group for people who live opposite the current badminton centre, and Adrian Christie is the chief executive of Badminton England. Good morning to both of you, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Alex, firstly to you, how do you feel about the decision?
Well, I think the fact that it was a unanimous decision is indicative of the fact that the Badminton Association put up a good fight and had their information in quite early, and we unfortunately were the small people.
What do you mean by that? Do you feel that you never stood a chance to win this?
In retrospect, probably yes. The reality is it's rather akin to the Cyprus savings situation, where the rules that were in place for planning were overridden because there was a secondary development of the pole.
Why don't you want the homes to be built in the current place of the badminton centre?
No. Let's put this. It's not about the homes.
Right.
It's about the overall sympathetic nature of the development and also the impact on the local area.
So you're happy for the homes to go ahead?
Well, let's put this in essence, the homes and the development are a possibility in any environment. The issue is about the type of homes, the type of development, and also the impact on the local community. Mr. Christie will go to his nice new palace when it's built, and he won't have to deal with the impact on a day-to-day basis of either the build or the consequences of the homes.
So, what is the impact? I'm slightly confused. What is the impact going to be?
Well, firstly, there was that everybody that lives in this part of the world knows that there are massive problems in terms of negotiating Danstead Way in the morning and the evening. This was put to one side because the planning was claimed that we'd have an amelioration of the effect of traffic in the evening and a slight two-journey raise in the morning. This is all done on a very, very small sample. It doesn't reflect the variability of traffic flow.
Okay, we're getting into kind of specifics. Only people who know the area particularly well will understand. Let's go to you, Mr. Christie. You've heard what Alex has to say. What's your reaction?
Well, I think what we've tried to do is over the last probably 6 to 8 months is to engage not just with the people at Loughton but the residents around the Thurston area particularly. You've got to also remember that we're going to be building a centre that's almost 3 times the size of what we got on the site of the National Bowl. And I think what we have been able to do is to work very closely with local communities, with the local council and other authorities to demonstrate that this facility that we are proposing is going to have such a massive impact, a positive impact on Milton Keynes, huge economic benefit, new jobs, and not just a world-class training facility for our squad, but a huge community sport facility.
Adrian, specifically though, these houses, what's your reaction to Alex's... I still can't quite work out if Alex is for or against the houses, but what about those?
Well, I think the only thing I would say about the housing is that, Milton Keynes has developed over a number of years now on the principle that enabling development has given or has brought employment, it's brought stadiums. The MK Don Stadium was enabling development. If you look around the continued development around that site, it's all about enabling development. And, it's the principle in which Milton Keynes has been able to progress.
Alex, it's the driving principle behind Milton Keynes.
Well, Adrian would say that because he's got an empire he's building. At the end of the day, he won't have to live with the consequences of it, and that's the bottom line. It's not the direct building of the properties that's the issue. It's the consequences and the nature of the property.
So, if the houses were more sympathetic to the area, you'd be okay with them?
Of course we would. I mean, to paint us as just being NIMBYs and not wanting anything to happen is totally incorrect.
Well, I haven't said that. I haven't said that this morning, Mr.
No,
Reagan.
you haven't. But it has been mentioned in other meetings.
Right. Well,
and we're not against development because we actually have allowed the badminton centre to have 3 developments over a 10-year period without any objections at all.
Adrian, isn't there anything you can do? Can't you listen to these people and make and these houses be more sympathetic to the area?
I think ultimately how sympathetic those houses are will be down to the developer that builds them and the approval from the council. I think what we have done in the last 6 months is we've looked at reducing the density. I think what we presented to the planners last night was, and this is a detail I'm afraid, but it's important, is the density of houses is, the government guidelines are 35 units per hectare. Ours is looking at 30 houses, so it's well below the density, and that was remarked upon several times last night.
That sounds a good compromise, doesn't it, Alex?
If I can, can I just say
very
one
quickly.
other thing? Is that we talk about the design of the houses. The houses are going to be no more than 2.5 stories high, i.e., a normal house with a loft extension design.
With respect, Adrian,
that's quite sympathetic.
That is a standard limitation in the environment. So don't pretend that you're doing anything as a favour.
I'm not saying that, but also, Alex, it also wasn't. Part of the issue that we were faced with was, somebody had designed and superimposed this monstrosity of a housing development showing 3- and 4-story houses. We were never building that. You know that. So I think we have tried.
Are you accusing me of that?
No, I'm not accusing anybody. I'm not accusing anybody. I'm just saying somebody did. I don't know who did that. I'm just saying that I was asked a question about the sympathy of the design of the development, and ultimately the design of that development is something that the council have to approve.
Alex?
With respect to that, it seems to be that if you don't agree with the Badminton Association in terms of what they want, you're tarred with some sort of brush. The reality of the situation is this particular development is being part funded by the people of Milton Keynes who are donating land worth about £8 to £10 million to the Badminton Association to develop their product. It's there are more issues in this than just.
It's a good point, isn't it, Adrian?
Homes.
Adrian? Sorry, I missed that bit. I missed your comment, your question.
Well, it's a good point that Alex makes, that the land's being donated, isn't it, by the people of Milton Keynes?
It's yes, in essence, the land is being donated by, but in return for that, what we are doing is we've looked very closely at the core strategy of Milton Keynes that wants indoor tennis facilities, it wants a 12-court badminton hall, it wants a number of other sporting facilities that our project is going to deliver. The cost of those has been calculated very carefully.
Badminton England is facing funding issues.
£11 million.
Badminton England is facing funding issues, isn't it? So you are dependent on this money, aren't you?
What do you mean by we're facing funding issues?
Well, all sports are facing funding cuts at the moment, aren't they?
Well, I mean, we've just we're the 7th most funded sport in the country.
Is that down from last year? Is the amount of money down?
It's down slightly from last year.
How much?
But it's still £1.9 million.
That's
over 4 years.
That's quite a lot. That's quite a lot.
It is quite a lot.
Not slightly.
But then, it's quite a lot. But then at the same time, the commercial programme that we've got is set to replace that. So we're not dependent on Milton Keynes Council monies to run our organisation.
OK, gentlemen, we have to end it there. Thank you very much indeed. The last voice you heard there was Adrian Christie, Chief Executive of Badminton England, and Alex Reagan was the other voice, Chairman of the Residents Group for people who live opposite the current badminton centre. Right, a little bit later than usual, but worth pursuing, I thought. Let's get the travel news. Adam Glynn.
Beds, Herts and Bucks travel.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Adam, there's lots of arguments going on. I do feel at some point this morning you and I should have a punch-up.
I don't know, what about, though?
I don't really feel strongly about... Oh, I flippin' hate roads!
Oh, they're brilliant, we need them.
Oh, get knotted.
Fine. Adam Glynn, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Yeah. Rod Stewart, it's over. Now, I do quite like that song. I do quite like a little bit of Rod Stewart. I quite like that song. But there's a reason why it jars with me. I'm going to play... Just listen to the first 2 lines of this song. Oh, hang on a second. Let me just cue this back up again, because the first 2 lines... Listen to this, OK? It sits uncomfortable... And I heard this... The first time I thought, oh no, can't listen to this song now because of this. It won't bother you, I'm just a little bit OCD about these things. Spot the obvious mistake.
The congregation sang, we knelt and prayed.
We knelt and prayed.
As we stood before God.
We knelt and prayed as we stood before God. Oh, Rod Stewart, you've ruined it. You've completely... We knelt and prayed as we stood before God. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Rod, what have you done? Oh. Now, a hospital in Hertfordshire is today streaming a live video of a hip operation via the social networking site Twitter. The Spire Bushy Hospital near Watford is the first hospital in the country to carry out the procedure. Well, James Watley is the head of social media at PR agency Ogilvy. Good morning, James.
Good morning.
This is pretty unusual. I must be honest. I got quite excited when I heard about this. Are more and more sort of odd uses of Facebook and Twitter taking place now?
All over the place, actually, yeah. I was as shocked as you were, but excited as well. This particular part of Twitter that they're using was used recently, actually. They launched the first part of a new film the new film with the Wolverine. They launched a new trailer on Twitter using this method before.
So if I follow it, it's at Spire Bushy, by the way, if anyone wants to follow them. If I follow them, I'll be able to see a live streaming of this, or is the gentleman just tweeting updates?
So what's happening is you can follow at Spire Bushy, or there's a hashtag live at Bushy. They are live tweeting the procedure, and apparently they've live tweeted a procedure before. What's different is that there's a new feature on Twitter now called Vine, and Vine allows you to take 6-second videos that loop.
Yes.
So they'll be taking these 6-second videos of different parts of the procedure. So like the first incision, etc. Oh, I'm getting shivers just thinking about it.
Oh, James, I'm getting shivers, but it's exciting me.
It is exciting. It's very exciting.
I like a bit of gore. So this is going to be on Vine. Fantastic. Which it does mean, though, I'm kind of just getting my head around Vine. It means that the same 7 seconds is going to be looped. So you will see that incision ad infinitum if you wanted to.
Yes, you will.
James, it's exciting me, but I don't know why this is a good idea. Why is it a step forward for us?
So, looking at this particular example, the reasons they've given are obviously around education, openness, but actually it's a procedure that isn't done that often in the UK. And this is one of the few hospitals in the UK that actually does this procedure. So they're kind of showing off a little bit that they can do it, and that's great. But, it's innovating, and it's using these new and exciting social media tools that everyone has at their everyone has at their fingertips to do something different. So why not?
What other examples have we got of people because everyone's... I feel slightly bored of... I've gone off Facebook now. Everyone's slightly bored of the limitations of Twitter and Facebook. What other examples are there of companies or people using them in an imaginative way?
Well, I mentioned the Wolverine. Basically, the teaser trailer for that film dropped on Vine first. It was just 6 seconds of the film looping backwards and forwards, and that was kind of game changing, really, for the film industry.
Yeah.
And a lot of films being made at the moment are dropping teasers from behind the scenes using Vine as well. And in fact, there's a website that I've been looking at this morning as part of my research called brandsonvine.com, and that just shows all the different brands that are using Vine at the moment. So lots of different 6-second loops from people like, all different brands all across the globe.
James, have you used Vine yourself?
You know what? I haven't, because it's an iPhone exclusive app, and I don't have an iPhone.
Oh, you're not a BlackBerry, are you?
No. I'm an Android.
Oh.
But, apparently it's coming to Android very soon, so I'm looking forward to playing with it.
James, thank you. Will you be watching the operation today?
As much as I can, without turning off. Yeah.
You've gone all girly. Are you a bit squeamish?
I don't know. I might be.
Your voice is getting higher and higher. James, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much. James Watley, head of social media at PR agency Ogilvy. If you want to watch the operation, I do. Oh, I do. I'll be watching that this morning at Spire Bushy or hashtag live at Bushy. I've just been using Vine for filming the best 7 seconds of a film that I'm watching. I hadn't thought of making incisions into people's bodies and filming that. I'll have some of that, definitely. 08459 455 555 is the phone number. Hazel Simmons coming on the show a bit later on. If you were at that meeting last night where the cancellation of free bus travel for children that go to certain Catholic schools was discussed.
BBC Three Counties Radio. First for news.
Catherine,
yes.
When you were in prison, did you find it too tough or too easy?
Oh, well, you know me, I was running the floor.
Oh, I say. Yes, I've seen Bad Girls. Morning, this is Iain Lee, BBC Three Counties Radio. 08459 455 555. Lots to talk about, including male prisoners should work harder for their privileges. The government's introducing new changes from November. Do you think prison is too soft? It all kicked off at a council meeting in Luton last night. Parents were unhappy about free transport to faith schools being cut. There was shouting in the public gallery. Well, leader of the council, Hazel Simmons, will be joining me on this programme to explain why they've made that decision. You've got your chance to speak to her. Give us a call now. And you can watch someone else's hip operation taking place at a Hertfordshire hospital live on your computer. Well, hip correspondent Justin Dealey is on his way to meet the surgeon performing the operation. We'll speak to him soon. Facebook.com/BBC3CR. 81333. Start your text 3CR. Or give me a call. 08459 455 555.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Is prison life too soft? Well, a new regime for all prisons in England and Wales will see the changes to the Incentives and Earned Privileges scheme. It means all inmates will have to actively earn any privileges. A simple absence of bad behaviour will no longer be enough. Well, under the changes, new prisoners will be required to wear prison uniform for the first 2 weeks, and failure to engage with rehabilitation schemes could mean withdrawal of luxuries such as in-cell TVs and access to leisure facilities. Well, Mark Day is from the Prison Reform Trust. Morning, Mark.
Good morning.
Mark, what do you make of these changes?
Well, of course, prison should be about people doing time rather than wasting time, and no one wants to see people locked up in their cells all day watching television. But it's very important, I think, not to confuse toughness with effectiveness. Prison has very high rates of reoffending on release. Around about 50% of people leaving prison reoffend within a year. And we know what works to reduce that reoffending. It's ensuring people inside get the opportunity to get skills in order to help them to get work when they leave prison. It's about solving some of the basic needs people need, such as housing, dealing with drug and alcohol addictions. Tough words like this on their own will do nothing to solve these high reoffending rates. And in fact, there's very little evidence to show that making a regime more harsh does anything in terms of deterring people from committing crime in the first place, or helping people to desist from crime if they're already in prison.
There will be people listening to this who've been victims of crime and are furious at what they perceive as the luxuries of prison life. They, if you've been a victim of a violent crime or a robbery or something like that, you would be angry to know that someone's going to be locked up getting Sky TV and playing on their PlayStations.
Well, Sky TV is available in hardly any prisons in the country, only in a few private prisons, and the Justice Secretary has made it clear that that will no longer be the case. Prison is often described as a holiday camp, but I don't think it's a type of holiday that most people would ever want to pay for. The Justice Secretary actually visited Pentonville Prison yesterday as part of his announcement of these proposals. I have spent a considerable amount of time in Pentonville Prison, a very bleak Victorian jail, overcrowded prisons, 2 prisoners sharing a cell for 1, having to share a toilet which often isn't screened.
There will be some people say, tough, don't commit crime.
But there is no evidence that a harsher prison regime does do anything to stop these people committing crime, and ultimately what we all want to see is fewer victims and people not becoming victims of crime in the first place. So what we need in prison is effective interventions that stop people from, when they're released from prison, going out to commit further crime.
Someone robbed my mum, though, Mark. And listen, I'm all for rehabilitation stuff, but if someone robbed my mum, as someone did, I'd want them to suffer pretty badly, to be honest.
And no one is saying that people who go to prison shouldn't be punished for what they have done. And indeed, the loss of liberty when you go to prison is the punishment which we give to people when they commit a crime and are sentenced. But once they're in prison, surely it's in everyone's interest that we do what we can to stop these people reoffending again when they're released. And as I said, we know what works. It's about getting people skills to get a job when they leave prison. It's about dealing with drug and alcohol addictions. Harsh words like this, they may score a few good headlines, but they will not do anything to redress these high reoffending rates out of prison.
Mark Day from the Prison Reform Trust, thank you very much. 08459 455 555. Do phone up and have your say on this. Well, Bob Turney is a former burglar and was in prison in the 70s. He now works as a prison officer. Good morning, Bob.
Thanks. Prison officer, I was a probation officer. Morning, sorry.
No, say that again, Bob. Your line cut out. You weren't a prison officer, you were a probation officer, were you?
Yeah.
I apologise for getting that wrong, sir. What do you make of these changes?
Well, it's all cosmetic, isn't it? I mean, you know, when somebody goes in prison, they go on a basic regime anyway, and then, according to their behaviour, they will start giving privilege. I was just caught the end of that last conversation you had, and remark was there like holiday camps. I mean, when was the last time somebody ever committed suicide in a holiday camp? And we're getting loads of suicides in prisons, you know. So it's just good rhetoric. I mean, nothing's changed really. I mean, they've just changed the wording of it all.
In fairness to the chap we just had on, he wasn't calling them holiday camps, but he did say yes that some people refer to them.
But some people.
As that. So, but
I know he didn't.
So in terms of new prisoners wearing uniforms for the first couple of weeks, let's look at that as a specific to start with. Would that have any impact?
No, not really. I mean, a lot of prisoners wear the prison uniforms anyway. But, you know, see, when you go into prison, you'll go on a basic regime where you'll just get the minimum stuff given to you. And then as you progress through the system, as you sort of, behave yourself, you will get a television and then goes on like that.
But should you get a television? Bob, should you get a television just for behaving yourself? The new changes will mean you'll only get the TV if you actually do some work.
What sort of work? You know, I mean, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You know, I mean, people will play the system.
So you think that these changes are flawed?
Oh, yeah, of course they are. You know, I mean, I agree with your last speaker. You know, it's basically about, addressing alcohol and drug issues, accommodation, work, all stuff like that if you're going to stop reoffending. I mean, what do we do? Do we send a person to prison for a punishment or to be punished? And if we're sending them to prison to be punished, we're not going to do a great deal with them. I understand all the stuff you said about your mother. I'm really got a sympathy for it all, but, you know, we've still got to try and reform these people.
What systems are in place at the moment for reform? There are, I know that drug and alcohol groups do go in and visit prisons from time to time to help with those issues. What other things are in place to help social issues that could prevent crime in the future?
Well, the point is, the problem is that, you know, we're talking about my type of prisoner, short-term recidivists, kept going back in. You know, I don't know if you've seen the programme Prisoner.
No, I've missed it. I've heard lots about it. It's on my list of things to watch.
Yeah, well, you know, I was very much like that type of prisoner. I found security in prison rather than in the community. So, you know, I was relying on prison to provide for me, and that's how we can get when we keep locking people up rather than.
Well, how do we stop that then? How do we stop people looking at prison as you know? You say people going back in because it's easier in prison than it is outside. How do we stop that?
Well, you know, I mean, I know where you're going with this one, but when I was in the 70s in prison, it was a lot different. We had no televisions, nothing. We was in our cells. We had buckets for toilets. If we misbehaved, we was put on bread and water for 3 days. You know, any work, we had to sell mailbags. But people still got dependent on that system. It's about trying to encourage them to take responsibility. That's why bail hostels are really good, because you're actually in the community, but you're being supervised in a very close way. and that will help people rehabilitate.
Bob, let me put a couple of points to you that have been made on our Facebook page. Gary says they're in there because they've done wrong. Don't give them anything and they won't want to go back there. We are way too soft. And Pete says they don't deserve a privilege, full stop. What would you say to Pete and Gary?
Well, that's what I say. What are we doing with people? Are we sending them to prison for punishment or to be punished? So what your two listeners are saying, we're going to punish them when we're in there. That won't work. I mean, we've got to face reality. That won't work. We're getting indicted with these people. And, of course, I understand people's views. Of course I do. Every crime there's a victim. But, if we're really serious about rehabilitating people, we've got to work with them.
Bob, appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much. Bob Turney, former burglar, and was in prison in the 70s and then worked in the probation service. 08459 455 555. What do you think? Listen, I've never been to prison. It's interesting talking to those two gentlemen. One's been in prison, one's worked in prisons. I've never been. The only real the insights I've got are watching Porridge, Papillon, and reading the front page of the Daily Mail. So, I don't know. Turns out that Sky isn't in most prisons, it's only in a select few. Well, there's a revelation that I never knew. 08459 455 555. What do you think? Prisons were invented by Quakers, did you know that? And the premise behind them was it was all about rehabilitation, not punishment. Have we got away from that? Surely that should be the main purpose of the prison, is to stop people re-offending. Is it a punishment? Does it need to be a punishment? Should we be tougher in prisons? 08459 455 555. Just time to tell you what's coming up on the show on BBC Three Counties later on today. The JVS show is back from 9 o'clock, and Jonathan is not in again today. Oh, dearie me. He has more time off than I don't know what. Tim Wheeler's sitting in, and if you heard Tim yesterday, I thought it was a cracking show. After 11, he's going to be focusing on your consumer problems, including the case of Paul. Paul had a bill for over £2,000 of computer games he hasn't bought and is worried someone has hacked his account. Can the JVS show help? Find out from 9 o'clock. Of course you didn't buy those computer games, Paul. Of course you didn't. No. You were hacked. Now, it all kicked off at a council meeting in Luton last night. It's all because free transport for faith schools is to be scrapped. If you want to see a video of the council meeting, I know... When you say it like that, it doesn't sound very exciting. I've been assured this video is very exciting, though. Facebook.com/BBC3CR. Pupils and parents started jeering from the public gallery of the town hall when the Borough Council announced their decision. Members of the executive walked out refusing to return until they left the building. Here's an audio summary of how the events unfolded.
Is there anybody else from the executive who wishes to comment? No? The recommendation is report before you. Members are very clear what the recommendation is. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you.
We haven't heard. What is it? Do we get the buses or do we not get the buses? No, we don't get the buses. Right. So we don't get the buses.
So I've explained right at the beginning of the meeting how the process was going to work.
But you didn't listen to a word they said. You only understand the traffic on the road.
This report is before members. Are there any questions on this report from other members of the executive?
What about the buses? There's a question.
That report is therefore before members. Is it agreed? Thank you very much.
I've just checked out the video while that was playing. It is definitely worth having a look. Facebook.com/BBC3CR. Well, Antoinette Catula is the spokesperson for the Cardinal Newman Preserve Our School Transport Committee. They're one of the schools who will lose their free bus service from September. And leader of the Labour-run Luton Borough Council, Hazel Simmons, joins me as well. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Antoinette, we'll start with you first. You were at the meeting last night. What was your reaction to the decision?
Very, very, very disappointed. Call me naive, but I did think that I did think that we'd do a much better deal than what we done last night. And we met with Hazel and her team last week, and we felt we were working with them, and we've put a lot into our campaign. And as a community, this is such a big thing. This has been in place 45 years, and now historically the council has taken it away. But what's absolutely gutting is I feel, and I do understand that they need to do cuts from central government, is that Cardinal Newman as a school has got massive areas of poverty that they deal with, and these kids will not be fit to go to Cardinal Newman because of the decision.
Well, if parents, if I understand, part of the deal is that there's £420,000 that's being shared out to pay towards school buses, and also if parents are living in actual poverty, under £16,000 or £17,000 a year, then they will get free travel, won't they?
No, they'll get free travel if they're on free free school meals.
Right.
Not otherwise. And yes, we have a payout. Yes, but it's a one-off payout. Now, where that's going to go is just ridiculous. We've got many years left in Cardinal Newman. A one-off payment is going to go absolutely nowhere. And that's why people we were confused last night. It wasn't clear when they made the decision. I think we all sat there looking at each other. And then when it hit into our minds what had happened, people got very, very upset and very cross. Most of them people would be Labour supporters. I know I'm a Labour supporter and have been my whole life, or my whole voting life. I'm just so disappointed and so gutted, and the effect that this is going to have. And I think Hazel and her team just undermined the effect that this is going to have. But this is going to have a massive effect in a town like Luton, which is struggling as it is.
Let's put this to Hazel. Hazel, it was hard to follow last night, and you've let down everybody.
I know there was a lot of anger in the room last night. There was at the previous public meeting, and this was one of the hardest decisions the council's made. But the reality is we've got to save £45 million over the next 3 years, and we're looking at every service. We've tried to explain the dilemma the council's in terms of our budget reductions, and these are being imposed upon us by the government. We have no choice about it, and we have to ensure that in the longer term we have a balanced budget, and that we do keep our core statutory services in place.
Hazel, why did you walk out last night?
We didn't really walk out. It was the reality was we couldn't continue the meeting, so we adjourned it for a quarter of an hour for it to settle down.
You did leave?
It was a bit longer than that before we could go back in, but there was no way we could continue the meeting because nobody could hear anything.
But if you represent the people that were there, doesn't it seem a little bit disrespectful to walk out when they were protesting a decision that you'd made?
I mean, the protest, nobody's got any objections to any of the protesting, and they can continue to protest.
But you just walked out and ignored it?
That, I had a meeting to run last night. There was a lot of other very important decisions on the executive agenda that we had to take forward to do with the budget, and therefore...
But Hazel, this was a very important decision to us.
I know.
Hazel, I'm just really surprised you've done what you've done, and that this is a massive voting community for you, and I'm really shocked, really shocked, and I think we need to carry on talking as a bunch of parents to yourselves to see where we can go on this, because this, the long-term effect on this is going to be massive on yourselves as well as the school.
Antoinette, as you know, part of the recommendation last night was very clearly added to the recommendation was that we set up some sort of steering group to work with you and the school to work on mitigation, whatever else we can do, to look at the bus times, to see if we can, as was suggested the last time we met, to get new coach.
Antoinette, can I interrupt for a second? Antoinette, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why should I pay for your kids' travel to school?
Do you know what? This has been in place for 40-something...
But why should I now... just because it's been there for a long time, just a question that some people will be thinking this morning. Why should I pay for your kids to travel to school?
Well, there might be people who are thinking that this morning, but believe you me, when they've finished getting us, which they have, they'll move on to the next community and the next community to take something away.
But can you answer that? Can you answer that question?
This is children's education at the end of the day.
Well, it's not though, is it?
And I'm sorry to say, but hold on. We as a town, we as a community, a big Catholic community, over 95% of Cardinal Newman is Catholic. We put an awful lot back into this town.
Okay.
We're a working class.
But Antoinette, can you answer the question?
Antoinette,
can you answer the question? Why should I and other people pay for your children's travel to school?
Because I'm sorry to say, but the next generation is very important to get them educated and to get them up and ready for the future. And it's about putting money back into the next.
But Antoinette, again, you're not. This just one. I'll ask one more time, and then we've got Tricia's called in. Why should I pay for your children's travel to school?
Well, I don't see why you shouldn't. We have to pay towards lots of things, and I don't begrudge that whatsoever. And it's just another thing that we have to pay.
Okay, Trish in Luton. Antoinette, just for a second. Antoinette, just for a second, because Trish has called in. Trish is in Luton. Trish, you've got a point you'd like to make to Hazel Simmons.
Yeah, well, just to answer the point you're making to Antoinette there, the Catholic community, every parent of a child in school pay 10% towards the building contribution. So that's a cost that the local council don't have to pay. So if the school no longer stays as a faith denomination school, then that will have to be picked up by the taxpayer as well.
Hazel, is the school going to stop being a faith denomination school?
There is no intention of that happening.
Oh,
we'll work with the school and the parents. There is no intention of taking the buses off. The argument is, and always has been, about who pays for the buses. And
so just to confirm, ladies, 1 second.
Into Cardinal Newman
1 second, Hazel, just to confirm.
Subsidise it for the first year,
Hazel,
because we recognise that this is going to be a hit on
Hazel,
parents.
just to confirm, Hazel.
With the steering
sorry, I don't know if you
to find other ways of mitigating.
Mrs. Simmons.
But the reality is, the council has to make such big budget cuts. It's looking at all its
Mrs. Simmons, can you hear me?
And longer term, we have to look at this as a discretionary service,
Hazel?
and we have to maintain our statutory.
So, Hazel,
service.
just to... No, 1 second, I just want to ask a question, then we'll come back to you, Trish. Hazel, just to confirm, the Cardinal Newman School will remain a Catholic school?
Of course.
Okay.
Okay, can I
Trish, you go first.
I'm a parent of two children that are due to start school in 2014 and 2015. They would have always gone to Cardinal Newman School. It's the school I went to and all my family went to. However, due to the cost now of sending the children to school, I work full-time, my husband works full-time, we will not be able to drive them to school, and I will not have my children get an indirect bus route through the town. The council have not yet committed to any new contract with Arriva, so there's no guarantee there'll be a direct bus route. I will now possibly have to send my children to a local community school, which will displace other children that would have gone to the community school into going to Cardinal Newman. Hazel, can you tell me, the removal of the discretionary denominational transport, that possibly will now have to go into statutory transport to get children to the Cardinal Newman school that have no faith and do not wish to be educated in a faith education? Can you tell us what the budget forecast is for statutory transport to senior schools in the next 3 years? Because I'm sure you've just moved a pot of money around.
The reality is there is no intention to take off the direct bus route to Cardinal Newman.
Antoinette, let her answer.
There is no intention on our behalf to remove the bus service from the school at all. The reality is that we can, as we have done every other year, come to an arrangement with Arriva for that contract. As was explained to the public meeting, it can be within 2 months we can have a new contract with them.
But can you tell us...
Antoinette, very quickly.
Hazel, if the kids, because of the price, if the kids or the parents cannot afford to pay for the kids, and your transport man has said this over and over again, if not enough kids get out and use them buses, then the buses will disappear.
Yeah,
and that is the reality. Hazel, you cannot promise something that's not there. We've done that survey, and 58% of people on our survey said they would not pay for the buses and they would get in their cars. We worked it out on the survey that we done.
Okay,
that would be 300 extra cars.
What's your question to Hazel?
I'm very interested in what Hazel is going to do about this, because come September, people will get in their cars.
Okay, Hazel, there's going to be a problem.
And one of the big things Hazel cried about 8 years ago, which I would, is the congestion that's going to be.
Okay, let's put that to, because we're running out of time. Hazel, the congestion that's going to be in place.
Obviously, we don't want the congestion, and that's why we've suggested that there is a steering group to work with parents to look at. They say the cost of Arriva is too expensive to work with parents and the school. We've talked to the school about maybe changing their opening and closing times so that we can use less buses. This all reduces the cost then to the parents, and it's about working with parents now on what other mitigations we can put in place.
OK, we have to end it there. Hazel Simmons, the last voice you heard there, leader of the Labour-run Luton Borough Council. You also heard Antoinette Catula, spokesperson for the Cardinal Newman Preserve Our School Transport Committee, and the third voice was Trish in Luton. I am 08459 455 555. Keen to get your thoughts on this. Do non-faith schools don't get free transport, do they? I'm just curious as to why atheists are excluded from this. And I still don't have a good argument. And if you've got one, I'd love to hear it. A good argument as to why I should pay for those kids to get the bus to school. I don't know.
And that's your latest news and sport. More from me at 8 o'clock.
Oh, do you know what? Your voice brings a big smile to my face every morning, Catherine Boyle.
Why? Because it gives you ammunition taking the mickey?
Yes.
Across beds, hearts and bucks, this is Iain Lee on BBC Three Counties Radio.
Well, it's been a very feisty show. More feistiness to come between now and 8 o'clock. You can watch someone else's hip operation is taking place on Twitter later on in the morning. Live from a Hertfordshire hospital. Well, Justin Dealey, our surgery correspondent, is meeting the surgeon performing the operation to find out what on earth they're doing. And with just 2 days to go to the local elections, political parties will be getting their final leaflets through your door. Our political reporter, Paul Scoynes, has been speaking to the Lib Dems in Hertfordshire. He'll tell us what they said in about 15 minutes. But back to this bus story. You may have just heard the argument there. It all kicked off at a meeting last night in Luton because free transport for faith schools is to be scrapped. Well, Dave's in Luton. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Ian.
Dave, what do you think about this? Should the pupils of Cardinal Newman School get free transport?
Well, I'm not regarding this situation. What I'm saying, Mrs. Hazel Simmons, did the councillors go to New Bedford Road first thing in the morning between 7 o'clock and 9:30 to see the amount of traffic in New Bedford Road where the buses all turn into that school? Because it's horrific coming up from Barton, coming out from Luton, coming out from Leagrave, to hit that spot where the buses all turn in. If they stop these buses, you're going to have all these parents taking their kids in their cars, coming in from all over parts of Luton and Dunstable, and there is going to be absolutely catastrophic hell at that point.
Dave, what I don't understand, and no one's been able to explain this to me yet, maybe I'm missing something, why should Catholic kids get free transport to school when other schools don't get that? I don't understand that.
Well,
why should they?
Well, where did they come from?
Well, listen, if you choose, I have been brought up to believe, if you choose to send your kids to a school that's not the nearest school, that's some distance away, if you choose that, then you should be responsible for the cost that incurs, shouldn't you? Or have I got that wrong?
Well, the thing is, how many more Catholic schools are there in this area of Luton? If these people want to take their kids to that school, and it's the only Catholic school around in Luton and Dunstable, well, then they've all got to concentrate onto that school.
Well, then they should be. If they've made that decision, then they should be responsible, shouldn't they, for the costs that are incurred of going to that school? Listen, I used to get the bus to school. My mum and dad paid for me to get the bus.
Oh yeah, so did I. But we're going back into. I'm going back into the 50s. But
well, I'm going back into the 80s. So.
Yeah, but the thing is, Ian.
Yes.
If when they built that school and the council said to the parents, "We're going to pay for all your school journeys," then why are they suddenly? I know because of the.
Well, it's not all of a sudden. It's 45 years ago they made that,
right,
and they've got to save. They've got to save £40 million.
Right, but they made the promise at the beginning that all kids will go to that school, will go by bus, and not have to pay for it. Now, after 45 years, they want to change it. They can't just change it just like that.
Dave, thank you very much indeed. I think some people would argue they haven't changed it just like that. Mandy's from Hertfordshire. Good morning, Mandy.
Morning.
What do you think about these children losing their free transport to the Catholic school?
As a practicing Catholic who went to Catholic school, I'm afraid it's time parents got real. If you're asking me as a parent, would I make sacrifices to get my children to a school? Absolutely, and I did. I worked part-time so I could take my kids to school. I went without glamorous holidays. I had old cars. That was my sacrifice. But, I still felt it was worthwhile because the education that my children got was outstanding. When everybody else was worried in September or in March, what school has my child got? I never had that worry. Because I knew where my children would be going. And parents, take a little look at the value, the good things you've got. Yes, you may have to get your kids to school. But hold on a minute, these children are at least 11, 12, and most of them are going to be 15, 16. Are you really telling me that they can't get their own way to school? My children will either walk. If I can't take them, they would walk or cycle. 45 years of a benefit is an awfully long time. But what we're really looking at is, does the council, and I'm not a Labour voter, so I'm not going to protect Hazel, but do, as voters, would you rather see the elderly who can't get themselves to the shops, who can't get out? Would you rather see transport or care for the elderly or buses for children? And I'm afraid we've got a choice in society these days.
Mandy from Hertfordshire, well, you put the point excellently. I have no questions to put to you. I'm curious as to what you consider to be a glamorous holiday, but we'll save that for another day. Thank you, Mandy. She puts a good point, doesn't she? On the text, Nick says, when I was a kid, we walked or cycled to school in all weathers. There was no bus. Our parents didn't have a car, and we got to school on time. And Ray has emailed in, if the council cut the funding for the school transport, it will result in many more cars on the town roads. A great number of these will, without doubt, be in Stockingstone Hill. This road is one of the most badly congested in town since the council changed the junction. 08459 455 555. Now, a hospital in Hertfordshire is today streaming a live video of an operation via Twitter. The Spire Bushy Hospital near Watford is the first hospital in the country to carry out the procedure. The orthopaedic surgeon carrying out the operation is Mr. Arish Hashemi-Najad. Well, he's with our reporter Justin Dealey. Justin!
Ian, exciting times. Later on, will you be watching this operation live?
Yes, I will, actually, yes. Will you be? You're a bit squeamish, aren't you?
I'm a little bit, yeah. So, I mean, before we talk to the surgeon, I've been asking people locally, would they watch this live? And this is what they had to say.
So, a live operation on Twitter, would you seriously want to watch that?
No.
Tell us why.
Because I think it's disgusting when you open yours and you can see everything what you have inside on the interior. No, it's not for me.
You're not even tempted?
No.
No. It's a definite no, isn't it?
Definite no.
It would probably interest me to see what goes on, but I would... it would shock me.
I mean, how long do you reckon you'd last without saying, oh, it's disgusting?
I don't know, as long as it goes on to.
Let's have a word with yourself as well, madam. This live operation, would you want to sit at your computer and watch all the action unfold in front of you?
Yeah, probably.
And tell us why you want to watch it. What would get you involved?
I'd just like to see what happens, how people react, probably see things that I've never seen before. It's quite interesting.
So it wouldn't be too gory for you then?
No.
And a final word here with Sydney. Sydney, this live operation today, you can watch it via Twitter. Would that interest you?
Certainly not.
Why would it interest you?
I'm not into blood.
Yeah, a bit too gory for you.
Indeed.
Some would, some wouldn't, clearly. A few questions here with the surgeon then. Mr. Arish Hashemi-Najad, welcome to the programme. You're live across Beds, Herts and Bucks. Very briefly, what exactly is this operation that you're carrying out today then?
This operation is called a periacetabular osteotomy. In plain terms, about 3 to 6% of the population have a failure formation of a socket in the hip joint, and that can lead to premature osteoarthritis. What we're trying to do today is to actually correct that deformity by cutting the bone around the socket and turning it around so it gives good coverage of the ball and hopefully gives pain relief and delays the need for hip replacement.
This is going to be live. You must be nervous. As the surgeon, anything could happen. We're going into your world today. You must be nervous.
Well, traditionally, surgeons are used to showing off. The whole reason why it's called an operating theatre, because in the 17th, 18th century, people used to sell tickets, and that's how they made their money. And they used to advertise the operations in newspapers, and people used to come and watch in the operating theatre. So we're used to having an audience, and quite often we do have visitors, trainees, and other surgeons who come and visit and watch. So we're not...
You can't wait, can you?
Well... It's something we like to do, and we like to actually teach, and we like to show what we do to the world, so it's quite an exciting time.
It's going to be fascinating. And a few questions here as well with Holly Broadway. You're from Merchant Marketing. You're using an app called Vine. Very briefly, what is Vine?
Vine is basically an app which allows you to take 6-second videos, so we'll be filming the procedure live as it happens in 6-second snapshots.
And where can people see this later on today?
So you can follow @SpireBushy and use the hashtag #LiveAtBushy to ask questions as we're filming the operation.
Can't wait, it's going to be an interesting day. And a final word here with the surgeon. You have a picture there of Iain Lee. Obviously, plastic surgeons here. What do you reckon? Can we do some work on him? Is there hope for him?
Well, I think he can probably get a good deal if you turned up and spoke to the hospital team.
but, some people are beyond the help.
Sorry?
But I think Iain could be helped if he really was interested in coming to see us.
Iain, we can get you a deal for the facelift. OK, it's not a problem. I've organised it for you. I'm a good guy, aren't I?
Dealey, what on earth are you doing? You have gone... there's a line, and you're about 20 feet on the other side of this line now, young man.
I thought as friends I could help you out, a live operation, never miss an opportunity. We can get you a deal, Iain. It's not a problem.
Have you seen the film A Clockwork Orange?
Yes, I have.
Okay, there's that scene where they strap Malcolm McDowell down into a chair and they clip his eyes open so he can't close them, yeah?
Yes.
I'm going to do that to you today, and I'm going to force you to watch every little bit of this operation.
Oh,
right?
God, sounds horrible. I mean, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be absolutely fascinating. It's all about education, but of course, as the surgeon was saying, anything could happen. But for him, it's a theatre, and he will be performing. He's thoroughly looking forward to it. So watch it live on Twitter a bit later on.
I'm going to be having some of that, Dealey. Thank you very much indeed, although you are a very, very naughty man. 08459 I nearly, through various contacts, I won't say how, got to go and watch a heart operation taking place live. Yeah, I did. I'd love to. I love all of that stuff. I saw my wife having a mole cut off. That was fantastic. I said to the nurse, can I watch? She went, if you want to. I did want to. Oh, they go really deep. Really deep. You can see all the fat. But I nearly got to go and see a heart operation, but it would have involved me, lying. And I thought, it's probably not worth doing that. 08459 455 555. Right, 7:45. Mr. Glynn.
I've got to be honest with you, Iain. I feel a little bit queasy right now after talk of removing the mole. It wasn't very nice.
I've got a scalpel, Glenn, and I'm not afraid to use it.
Iain. Right, things looking... We can have an argument about that if you want. Adam Glynn, BBC Three Counties Radio.
I'm coming for you, Glynn. Now, with just 2 days to go to the local elections, parties are getting their final leaflets through the doors and leaders are making last-minute dashes around the country giving speeches. The Lib Dems being no exception. They've been in Hertfordshire and have been speaking to our political reporter, Paul Scoynes. Paul, Lib Dems done quite well in this area, haven't they?
They have, Ian, yes. In relative terms, they've got 11 out of the 57 divisions in Buckinghamshire. They've got 17 out of 77 divisions in Hertfordshire. They've got control of Watford and Three Rivers councils. They've got... last week, in fact, they managed to wrestle the last Tory from Watford Borough Council onto their side, so there are no Conservatives on Watford Borough Council. So, across the patch, they're the second party in most of the county, well, in both county councils, so they're doing fairly well.
What are their policies at this election?
They in Buckinghamshire, they support families. They say to tackle child poverty, develop drop-in centres. They'd like to invest in the roads and the pavements. They want to develop more cycling lanes in places like Aylesbury. They oppose HS2, as do many of the parties there, and any expansion into Luton and Heathrow, as well as reducing 30-mile-an-hour speed limits to 20. In Hearts, they're very much against the incinerator, as they both are in Buckinghamshire as well. And we heard yesterday that the judicial review into the Calvert incinerator had failed. They, in Hertfordshire, would like to also see slower speeds. They'd like to revive town centres, perhaps use the voluntary sector more efficiently and not compete with it. They say there's lots of council initiatives which put themselves against the voluntary sector, and they'd like to put a stop to that. So those are just some of the policies they're looking at.
The voluntary sector, of course, I would imagine is a slightly friendlier way of saying the big society. We don't hear the big society anymore, do we?
We don't.
It's that same thing, though, people helping communities and doing stuff for free.
It is, and is still, if you look at the coalition's policies, certainly at the local level, the Conservatives are very much trying to get local people still to do things, as are, Lib Dems in certain areas as well. So you will see that more and more happening because, councils don't have the money anymore.
What are the leaders saying to you?
Well, I thought what I'd do is because we've had both of our debates now. I'll give you a few second snippets of what the Lib Dem leaders in each of the counties would like to do. So here's the priority, or the priorities of Avril Davis from the Lib Dems in Bucks.
Give every child in Bucks the best start in life. Make it easy to live a healthy lifestyle for everyone to extend good quality living and invest in jobs and the economy.
And here's Stephen Giles Medhurst from the Hertfordshire Party.
Cutting costs, slashing spin, listening locally, fixing the roads, making sure there's the right school provision in the right places.
those are the two leaders of the local parties.
Yes.
This is Nick Clegg. He came to Watford last week, and I saw him at a school which has been vastly improved, and he was talking about what the Lib Dems' priorities are across local councils nationally.
Everyone's going to make savings, whether you're in national government or local government. So the question really then becomes who's going to do it in the best possible way and make sure that money goes on the things you really need. So, that's the reason, for instance, why the Liberal Democrats for a long time have been highly critical of the Conservatives in the County Council in Hertfordshire for not anticipating the pressure on school places, which is a real problem now. If they'd actually listened to Dorothy Thornhill and the Liberal Democrats some years ago, we wouldn't now have this pressure on school places, which is a source of great anxiety for parents. So that's just heartlands don't remain heartlands forever, and of course you don't change the world in one election, but you can make progress, you can make an impression. Just recently we won a by-election against the Conservatives in Eastleigh, in a Westminster by-election, which used to be absolutely sort of true blue Conservative territory. And I think what people have found where Liberal Democrats, are in power, Liberal Democrats work very hard for their communities, know their communities very well, stick closely to the priorities that people have, even in difficult times, and seek to make sure that the decisions that are made as fairly as possible.
And Nick Clegg talked about HS2 as well, didn't he?
That's right, Ian, he did, yes. And this is a difficult one for him because there's a lot of local opposition. Lib Dems in Buckinghamshire are very much opposed to HS2, but as an MP for a northern town, for Sheffield, he obviously has a different perspective, and, of course, it's a Conservative policy, or Conservative and coalition policy too, even though it was brought in by Labour. So as a coalition government, they're having to try and bring it together. This is what he said about HS2.
Of course there are tensions when you start developing a huge national project of great national significance. You will get certain areas that don't like it. But I think it is worth thinking about the prize that is available to us, as a country. And I think people care about this just as much in the south as they do the north. There is this feeling that sometimes the country has not been moving forward as one, and there's been this big north-south divide. That, by the way, creates huge pressures, for instance, on house prices and school places in parts of the south, and leave communities in the north slightly sort of left out. And I think what high-speed rail is all about trying to overcome that. It's a long-term project. This will take years, if not decades, but it's all about a vision of how we can make sure that prosperity is spread fairly across the whole country.
Very diplomatic answer there. And what's he like in real life? Because he always strikes me as a very handsome man, Nick Clegg. Is he handsome in real life?
He's quite tall. Yeah, he wears a suit well. All of them are quite tall, actually. I've met all of them now.
Oh.
Well, all of the sort of main three.
Is it appropriate? Just going off on a slight tangent. If I did meet David Cameron, but it was before he was Prime Minister, so he didn't count, and he turned his back on me. But if I met David Cameron now, I would ask him for his autograph. Do people do that?
Not many people I've seen. He does sign them, though, for the party faithful. I've met him when he's been at party faithful events. They generally always sort of put them at places where they're in a safe zone.
Very quickly, are we expecting a big turnout at these elections?
It's tricky. I mean, next year you'd probably get a bigger one because of it's Euro elections as well. So you get, but I think they'll be bigger than the PCC elections. I think that's fairly safe to say. Although I still think we're probably only looking at 20% in a lot of places. Wow. We've got the Conservatives tomorrow to hear from. That's the final one. And then, of course, we've got voting on Thursday. We will be bringing you a very in-depth results service on Friday morning. Overnight in Hertfordshire, we'll know the results. So we'll know most of, if not, we won't know Watford and we won't know Three Rivers. But apart from those two areas, we'll know the results first thing Friday morning. I'll be here with you bringing those dates. And then all the way through the day, we've got the Buckinghamshire counts, which are going to come in throughout the day.
Brilliant. Look forward to that, Paul. Thanks very much indeed. Now, we've been talking about the free school buses for the Catholic schools, and Hazel is in Welling. Good morning, Hazel.
Good morning.
What do you think about the council getting rid of the free school buses for the Cardinal Newman School?
Well, I would agree with it because I don't see how you can keep them to a contract made 45 years ago. I've got two grandsons who were allocated a school in St Albans. They were refused a school in Welling, or Welling Garden City, to which they could have walked, and they were allocated a school in St Albans. My daughter didn't have a car, she couldn't afford a car, but she had to send two boys to St Albans by bus. Well, if these parents are saying we'll have to get into our cars and take the kids to school, if they can afford to do that, they can afford to pay for the bus to take them to school.
How old were your grandchildren when they got on the bus?
11.
And did they go on their own without their mum and dad?
Oh, yeah.
And so I got the bus when I was 11, Hazel. My mum and dad paid for the bus when I was 11. And 11, you're capable of getting the bus, aren't you?
Yeah. And, I mean, they didn't have any choice because they tried to get it changed. They tried to get them allocated to their local school, as I say, to which they could have walked, and it was refused. So they had to go to St Albans.
A lot of the parents and the children were protesting very loudly last night at the council meeting when this decision to scrap these buses was taking place. What would you say to those parents, Hazel?
Well, I would say when I was at work, I was awarded a contract for that work, and 20 years later the firm couldn't afford it, so they changed it. And this is what happens in this world. People can't get everything they want because it was awarded 45 years ago or whatever.
Hazel, thank you very much indeed. Hazel in Welling. I'm really struggling. If someone can explain to me why these children should get free travel to school, please do give me a call, 08459 455 555, because I don't want to be harsh, but I don't understand what separates these children from this Catholic school and other schools.
The sport is this. British and Irish Lions head coach Warren Gatland will announce his squad for the summer tour of Australia this lunchtime, with the possibility that Saracens' Brad Barrett, Owen Farrell and Chris Ashton could feature. And the weather, I know.
The sport is this.
Well, do you know what?
Sport is this.
I believe it's called I've choked. I've done one, then another, and I just might as well go home. Shall I do the weather? I'll probably get it wrong.
Yeah, have a go. Go on.
Largely fine and dry with a top temperature of 16 degrees Celsius. That's 61 Fahrenheit, apparently. Don't trust me. I can't speak. There's more news and sport online at bbc.co.uk/3 counties. First for news. Sorry about the delivery.
The sport is this. The sport is this.
I was trying to collect myself and failed.
Sometimes you just need to take a deep breath and give up.
You know what I need?
Yeah?
Cup of coffee.
Hey. A Scoinsy special. The sport is this. Morning, this is Iain Lee, BBC Three Counties Radio. It's always exciting when political reporter Paul Scoins is in the building. He make good coffee. He make strong coffee. He'd make me go mad. Right, lots coming up between now and 9 o'clock, including male prisoners should work harder for their privileges. Well, the government's introducing the new changes from November. Do you think prison is too soft? If you've ever been to prison, or if you've been a victim of crime, or if you just have a view on this, I'd love to hear your view this morning. 08459 455 555. And the most amazing recording from a council meeting in Luton last night. You can see the video, facebook.com/BBC3CR. We'll play some of the audio. It all kicked off because parents were unhappy about free transport to faith schools being cut. Well, I'll be speaking to one of the mums about why she's so unhappy. And maybe she can explain to me why they should be getting free transport. 08459 455 555.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
The government's announced a new scheme to make male prisoners work harder for privileges. From November, inmates will wear a uniform for 2 weeks and have restricted access to cash and televisions. The Justice Secretary, Chris Grayling, says he wants them to earn rewards by taking part in work, education and rehabilitation. Well, our reporter Justin Dealey has been to Bovingdon in Hertfordshire, where they have the Mount Prison. And Justin, I just have to clear up, because your solicitor has been in touch. You have at no point been in prison for anything. All charges were eventually dropped.
Yes, that is absolutely
Thank you, Justin.
correct.
Sorry
Thank you, Ian.
any damage I may have caused you earlier on in the show.
I mean, as you say, I've been in Bovingdon, where they have the Mount Prison. Earlier, we were asking people what privileges that prisoners should be entitled to, and according to most people, it's the basics and nothing else. I've also been asking people what their perception of prison life is like, and some interesting views here. This is what people had to say.
It's too easy now. I known people what have done prison, loads of prison, you know, and they said it's just a break, basically.
So what sort of things do they get from the people you've been talking to? What sort of things do they get then inside prison?
Computers and everything in there. But these chaps who built these prisons up here, they said they couldn't believe what they got in there. You know, they had absolutely everything.
One of the guys that I know who is a warder up there, I've said to him, you know, what's it like? And yeah, it's cushy. So they want to play pool for 8 hours a day, fine.
They seem to have DVDs, they've got their Game Boys, they've got their TVs, videos, they've got everything in there. It's like it's not, I say a holiday camp, it's almost like a hotel.
We're, the taxpayers, etc., are paying for them to be put up in a hotel, which Joey's called it, and it is a hotel. Bits and pieces that I haven't even got home, and I work.
I think Game Boy means something completely different in prison parlance, Justin. But I wonder if any of those people had actually been to prison.
I mean, obviously, they're getting then stories from other people. That they know people who are wardens. They know people who have helped to build that particular prison, the Mount Prison. I mean, it sounds to them like it is a hotel with the facilities they've got, with the DVD players, with the pool, all those sorts of things. To them, it sounds absolutely fantastic. But personally, I still wouldn't want to chance it.
Listen, I wouldn't last 20 minutes in prison, partly because I'm so pretty, but it just would. And apparently the Sky TV is a bit of a myth. We spoke to someone from the prison reform group earlier on who says there are very, very few prisons that actually have Sky TV in them.
Yeah, it's
so
fascinating.
I wonder how much of this is kind of hyped up by the newspapers.
Well, if you read the papers this morning, they certainly have got Sky TV, and I think a lot of people who read reports in newspapers, they pick up that perception that it is a break, and even somebody said there, it's like a break for them, that they're going to a 5-star hotel. That's the perception the public have got of prison life, but I'm sure if we speak to anybody who's actually been inside, they would tell us a completely different story.
Justin, thank you very much indeed. If you have been to prison, 08459 455 555. Well, we can speak to someone now who has been to prison. We're going to call him Harry, although that's not his real name. Good morning, Harry.
Good morning.
How many prisons have you been in?
5, I think.
And when was the last time you went to prison?
2008 was my release.
What did you do to go to prison, Harry?
I drove a car and my colleagues participated in robberies.
So you were a getaway driver?
Yes, I was.
What was prison like? We heard people say it's like a holiday camp. It's like a 5-star hotel. What's it really like?
Well, different jails have different rules, set rules, and it can all depend on where you go in terms of what privileges and facilities you have. I mean, the first place I went to was a youth offenders, where we had a shower every 3 days. You had association every 3 days where you could go out and play some pool, and ring your family, ring your friends. That was every 3 days. You'd get an hour. And other than that, you was either locked up or you went and did education, English, maths, or you worked in a workshop. Most jails have that sort of system running. Privileges, you know, you get privileges. You have to earn your privileges, though.
Well, do you have to earn your privileges? I thought the system at the moment was that if you behaved well, you got privileges, whereas the changes coming into place in November, you will have to actually do things. You'll have to do work and contribute to get your privileges.
You had to behave well, but you had to also be looking to maybe do something on the wing, like keep the place tidy and not get into any trouble. After 3 or 4 months, they review you and see if you had you haven't been in any trouble or no disparaging comments have been put in your report card. Then they'd consider you for going up a stage to entitle you to more privileges, more gym sessions or something.
And did you have things like Sky and PlayStations and Game Boys?
I've never seen Sky Television. I had a PlayStation, which I got once I'd got, because there was 3 stages, basic, standard and enhanced. You start on standard. If you're bad, you get dropped to basic. You don't have a television, you don't have anything in your cell. And then you progress to enhanced. And then when you're an enhanced prisoner, you could buy a PlayStation with your own money, which you then had to save up weekly.
What kind of games were you playing on your PlayStation? Were you playing things like Grand Theft Auto?
If whatever company stocked that jail with PlayStations, whatever games they had, then you could buy the games that were on their.
Because there might be some people who would see an irony in you being in prison for being a getaway driver and playing a game like Grand Theft Auto, which involves driving around committing crimes.
Yeah.
What stopped you? What changed you? What stopped you? You say you've not been in prison since 2008. Yeah. What worked? I'm assuming you're on the straight and narrow. What worked? What changed you?
Well, I know obviously you can get a lot of these privileges and everyone, like the materialistic things, it does seem nice and cushy, but is your punishment to not have things or to be locked away from society so you don't see your family? So there's a lot of other aspects that people forget that aren't cushy, and that's I feel like my grandfather passed away while I was there. I couldn't go to the funeral.
See, that's a punishment. Things like that are the punishment, aren't they?
Those are the punishments, yeah. I mean, I was in jail within the first 2 months. I'd watched a boy in the cell opposite me open his wrists, and a boy down the side, 18, he committed suicide because the actual being locked in the cell is the mental aspect that can get to a lot of people.
Harry, in 20 seconds, what are you doing now with your life?
I'm working, do volunteering for the community, play sport.
Good stuff. Listen, we're going to move it there. Thank you very much for that, and I'm glad to hear that things are going a little bit better for you. Well, Andrew Nielsen is from the Howard League, a penal reform charity. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning.
What do you make of these proposals?
I think quite a lot of them are cosmetic, to be honest. There's a bit of a restatement exercise going on here, where things that were already the case are being re-announced as if they're new. I mean, for example, the fact that televisions wouldn't be provided to prisoners on basic level, the fact that there'd be a kind of standardised list of items available in each prison for prisoners to buy, or that bad behaviour would lead to a potential downgrade. These are all things that were already the case. But there are some changes, and there's a particular focus on prisoners in their first 2 weeks, which we are concerned about because it's doing things like restricting their access to private cash, and making them wear uniform at a time when we know that prisoners in that very early period of first being in jail are at their most vulnerable to suicide and self-harm. And, you know, if you're, for example, a prisoner with, say, a smoking addiction, and you haven't got access to cash, then the chances are in that first 2 weeks you'll quickly get into debt from other prisoners buying cigarettes off them.
There will be some people, Andrew, listening to this saying, tough. You shouldn't have mugged that old lady. You shouldn't have beaten up that bloke. You shouldn't have robbed my mum's house. Tough.
Well, I think the biggest issue there is what happens when they come out, and if they are being put into an unjust situation, and I'll come back quickly to why it's unjust in a second, then the chances are that they'll feel even more angry with people than they did when they went in.
If they don't have cigarettes for the first 2 weeks.
I need to make it clear why it's unjust.
Okay.
Is that one of the things that the government is saying is that prisoners will be downgraded from these privileges if they're not engaging in purposeful activities like work, training, education. Now, I would completely agree with that principle, but the problem is that the prisons are struggling to offer these activities. There's a string of reports into prisons recently by prison inspectors saying that they don't offer courses, and that prisoners spend most of the time lying on their bunks. Now, in that situation, it's not the prisoner's fault that there's an idleness going on that the prison itself is actually encouraging.
And have the government announced any plans to provide more services in prisons to help rehabilitation?
They've talked about it, but there's no sign of it actually happening. I mean, in the sense that the prison service, like every other public service, is facing budget cuts, and it has, in fact, faced budget cuts year on year for many years prior to this government coming in. And that's the context in which they're struggling to provide these courses. Now, as I say, it's all very well to say, well, if prisoners don't engage, then, you know, they shouldn't get privileges like the ability to watch TV or to buy snack foods or whatever it is. But you do have to actually make those opportunities available for them.
Andrew, we have to end it there. Thank you very much. Andrew Nielsen from the Howard League, a penal reform charity. Now... Jonathan, where on earth is Jonathan Vernon Smith, Tim?
Oh, I don't know. Sat at home watching, what is it, Bargain Hunt he watches or something? Or
Homes Under the Hammer. He's at home.
Yeah.
He's going to be watching Kyle this morning, let's be honest.
Yeah, quite possibly. Getting some tips.
No!
I hope he's not listening.
He's not listening to this rubbish. He'll be listening to Radio 4. He'll be getting tips on how to do it properly. How to do it properly from Kyle the Master.
Yeah, he is the master of exploitation.
Yeah.
Jeremy Kyle.
Well, Jonathan should start doing lie detector results and DNA. You're really making things worse for you by yourself, by the way. He should start doing lie detector results and DNA.
I genuinely think that would be a good thing to bring into the programme. Why not?
Imagine you got Jonathan there, you got some bloke, you got two blokes and a woman, little baby in the corner, and he's got an envelope, and he gets the envelope. He goes, right, we're going to open this up. Right, okay. So we've got Steve and Mark.
Yeah.
Steve. Yeah. You are not the father of Chantel. What? Mark. Got the DNA results back.
Yeah.
You're not the father of Chantel.
What?
Now, Sophie, do you know who the
I can, yeah.
Awesome! It will be awesome!
I don't know. Is that how it works? I've never really watched it. I'm more of a Ricky Lake kind of a guy. But I just watch VHSs of Ricky Lake from the past. And just for people, all the problems are solved now. So it's fine. You can watch it kind of without any kind of guilt. Because everyone's fine now. Yeah. Some of them have passed away. This morning on the programme, we're continuing discussion about prisons. I'm asking, do you think making prison tougher will make it more effective? That's the question we're asking. You've been discussing this all morning, so I won't go over too many of the details.
No.
It's November when this changes. It's part of I had this written down, it's the Incentives and Earned Privileges scheme. So it's about whether prisoners should actively earn privileges by being good, or whether they should just be rewarded for not being bad. It seems like quite a logical one for me.
Yes.
But I don't... There was a programme on about 3 weeks ago, and it's not the kind of thing I generally watch, but I did sit down and watch it, and it was I think it was called Inside and Out, Prisons Inside and Out. It was on one of the channels on TV, and I can't remember which one. But it was very good.
They are good, those channels.
Oh, God, I love the channels. Yeah. There was a guy who was in a London prison, and it followed his story, and he knew all the staff in the prison, and they were quite maternal and paternal towards him, and they all looked after him, and he knew when he was getting his meals, and he had quite a comfortable cell. He could watch a bit of TV. He played pool. I think he worked in the kitchens. He was quite happy with his life. When he came out, he had nothing. He was homeless, and so he would try and find some kind of minor way to get himself back into prison, because that's where he felt comfortable. That is where he felt safe. And the question is that right? Is it right that he should only feel safe and only feel comfortable in prison because that's where he knows he's accepted, he's got friends?
Yeah.
Or should it actually be a lot harder? The key thing is, about 2 weeks after he came out of this prison, he was moved. He was in and out of London. He was moved to a prison in Norfolk. He didn't know anyone. He didn't know any of the staff. He didn't know any of the inmates. And also, they didn't have the same meal times. They didn't have the same privileges. He hated it. He came out, and the first thing he said when he came out of this prison that was up in Norfolk, he said, "I hated that. I never want to go into prison again."
Yep.
So what does that say? I mean, presumably the tougher conditions meant it a place he didn't want to go into. But I can understand that if you brutalise people, if you make it an awful, rough experience and take away their humanity, then I suppose that's not preparing them to come out into the real world either. So, I don't know. I haven't been inside prison. You haven't been inside prison. No. Neither has anyone in my family. But I would like to hear this morning from people who have been inside. I was very interested listening to the chat you had on a few minutes ago. People who have had that experience. Do you think that making prison tougher will make it more effective? If you've been inside, if you have relatives who have been inside, was it tough enough? Should it be tougher? Or actually, is it quite right that we should be giving people incentives? We should start to humanise people, start to prepare them for the real world. I'm interested to hear your view. 08459 455 555. I'm also interested in this picture that you've just put out in front of me.
It's a nice picture that I've been... was it Paul Scoyne sent me of you playing tennis?
Yeah, nothing weird about that.
Sans clothes.
Call 08459 455 555.
08459 455 555.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
If you missed Tim filling in for Jonathan yesterday, it was a cracking listen. I thought it was brilliant. Absolutely loved it. Hey, Jonathan, if you want to take the whole week off, do you know what I mean? You just... No, I know. I just think he deserves a break, and Tim deserves a break into show business. You know, both helping each other. I just thought, you know, it was a really good listen. Now, it all kicked off at a council meeting in Luton last night. It's all because free transport for faith schools is to be scrapped. Pupils and parents from Cardinal Newman Roman Catholic School started jeering from the public gallery, while members of the executive walked out, refusing to return until they left the building. It took a while for people to realise what had actually happened, but when they did, they were very angry.
Is there anybody else from the executive who wishes to comment?
No? The recommendation is report before you. Remember, they're very clear what the recommendation is. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you.
We haven't heard. What is it? Do we get the buses or do we not get the buses? No, we don't get the buses. So we don't get the buses.
So I've explained right at the beginning of the meeting how the process was going to work.
But you didn't listen to a word they said. You only understand the traffic on the road.
This report is before members. Are there any questions on this report from any members of the executive?
What about the buses? There's a question.
That report is therefore before members. Are those, is it agreed? Thank you very much.
Well, Laura Wilkinson has 2 children at the school and another will go there in September. She spoke at the meeting last night. Good morning, Laura.
Good morning.
Why should council taxpayers continue to pay for transport for your children?
I think the point is being a little bit misunderstood on the show this morning. The point is not about who pays for the transport. Our main issue is we are worried for our children's safety getting to school because at the moment there's an 800 line which Arriva supplies that runs directly from different bus passes around the town to Cardinal Newman. If the free funding stops, that bus we're not confirmed that will still run because there's no subsidy going into Arriva to make sure that it's profitable for that to run.
Hazel Simmons,
children will have to get 2 buses.
Hazel Simmons has said that she'll talk with Arriva to get a direct private bus service.
Hazel Simmons says an awful lot of stuff, Iain, but I'm afraid I have no faith left in Luton Borough Council. After our meeting we had last week out at Cardinal Newman that we fought to get because for some reason she didn't want to talk to us. She says she likes to talk to us. She didn't want to talk to us. We had to demonstrate outside the town hall her to meet with us. And we had emailed and she never emailed us back. So here, Hazel Simmons says an awful lot of stuff, but unfortunately, all that she says isn't watertight.
But it is. I still don't. No one's been able to explain to me, Laura, why.
I think that's the problem. A lot of people don't understand.
Well, maybe you can explain it to me. Maybe you can explain to me. No one's been able to explain to me why the children that go to this Catholic school should be given free transport when other children have to pay for it.
Well, the main thing is the school was originally, there was supposed to be 4 local Catholic high schools near all the primary schools around Luton. We've gone back and we've really dug into this. There's been a committed team that have gone and looked. We've been over to the Bedford archives. And these 4 schools all were supposed to have a local high school. But then the council decided that they didn't want these. They needed the one that was upside Sacred Heart in Ashcroft Park for Ladies' Awareness School. And
when was this?
When was this? Had other purposes. That was back in the 1960s.
Okay, so it's in the 60s. That's 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah, but the school hasn't moved. It hasn't got any nearer to Luton.
But you knew where the school was when you decided to send your children.
I actually didn't, Iain. You've got that wrong. I've got a child starting in September.
Well, hang on a second, Laura. If you don't know where your child is going to school, that's irresponsible, isn't it?
The funding was still in place, Iain. When I chose that school, when the admissions come out and I got my booklet,
you knew where the school was?
I knew the school was, but there was still
That's what I said.
transport that was being run out to Carl Newman when
but again, Laura, apart from this privilege that was given to you 45 years ago, you've still not explained why these children at the Catholic school should get free transport when other schools don't.
We're actually not saying they should get free transport. What we're fighting for is to keep the 800 line buses that go. So my son, when he's 11 and 3 weeks old, because to be taught with a Catholic ethos, I don't want him to have to go from Round Green on a bus into town, wait round the back with the winos and the drunks, and then battle for the 24 bus along with the sixth form children, the Barnfield children, the Icknield children, because I feel he's too young to do that.
11's not too young to get on a bus.
11's not too young to get on a bus. I don't want my son to go to the shop in Luton on his own. I'm sorry, Iain, you need to open your eyes.
My eyes, Laura,
it's not a safe town for people to let 11-year-old children. I don't think you'll find many 11-year-olds that are allowed to freely walk around to Luton on their own.
Can't you drive him to school?
Well, that's what we're planning to do, and I think that's where
then there's no problem
really going to come in for LBC. Well, I think if you've seen anything of our demonstration on the 25th of March, when we all drove to Cardinal Newman School, and there was only really about 150 cars, it brought the AFIX to a standstill.
Right.
And that's what will be in store, I'm afraid, because the councillors don't seem to worry about the local residents, about the blue light.
But what about it costs? They've got to save. The council have to save
another 4,000 homes.
Council have to save £45 million. So
yes, they do.
So they have to make cuts.
They also have £52 million in reserves.
Okay,
and
the
they're
cuts
underspent by £10.2 million this year.
And the cuts that they're making, there are so many people who would say, "This is just listen, you choose to send your child to a school that's not near you.
I do, yeah.
Pay for it."
Well, do you know what? The ultimate thing is, Ian, if I'd known about the transport being cut and that there wasn't going to be a direct bus, a guaranteed direct bus, I probably would have chose Stopsley. But because the council are underhanded and they decided to make this decision after we'd all put in our application for where we wanted our children to go, so the choice is now taken out of my hands because I couldn't get a place in Stopsley now if I wanted to, my catchment school. And this is the other problem, because coming up next year, when people do know now that there will be no direct bus that goes, we will all start feeding off of our local schools, which are enormously oversubscribed. And come 2015 in Luton, there actually isn't enough school places.
But that's a different argument.
What the council
the school places is a different argument, isn't it?
They will have to start busing children that actually don't want a faith education. They're going to have to start busing them out to Carl Newman.
Isn't it naive
it's going to be a
statutory
duty then?
Councils can keep operating in the same way.
Well,
no, because we're running out of time. No, Laura, it's not, because we're running out of time.
It's really important because
we're running out of time, Laura.
That are non-Catholic, and then they will.
We're running out of time. That point's been made several times.
Has it?
Yes, it has. Is it not naive to think that councils can keep operating the same way? Times change. We're in tough times, aren't we?
Yeah, but I would have thought our children would be last in line for,
Well, and disabled people would have thought they would have been last, and elderly people would have thought they were last.
Of £121,000,
yep.
I would have really thought, and they get consultants in every other day to waste more money when they can throw pop concerts that, ruin the town. They've got a busway that's costing ridiculous amount of money, which has been proven that it's gone bankrupt in 11 other towns. Nobody wanted it. We were told it was there to bring business into Luton. From Dunstable, the ghost town, it's worse than Luton. I think it's just disgusting. I don't think they've thought about it. I think they never consulted people on whether they wanted the busway. They didn't consult us. Their procedure on how they've done this to us is majorly flawed. Whether people agree with it or don't agree with it, there's certain procedures that should be followed when you're going to try and make these cuts. And Luton Borough Council have not done that, and that could be their major downfall.
Laura, thanks very much for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
Laura Wilkinson there.
Across beds, hearts and bucks, this is Iain Lee on BBC Three Counties Radio.
Morning. I tell you what, the last 30 minutes of the show, we'll open up the phone lines. You can give us a call, 08459 455 555. The two topics that seem to have you on the edge of your seats. Prisons, going to be reforms in prisons. Do you think we're too soft on prisoners? 08459 455 555. And a lot of very angry mums about the changes to the cancellation of the free bus service for the Cardinal Newman Catholic School. 08459 455 555. If you're angry, do give us a call. And apparently we've got some angry mums lined up. Always happy to talk to angry mums. They're my favourite kind of mums. But I really am struggling. Am I being stupid here? I'm not deliberately being obtuse. Am I being stupid? I can't understand why these kids at the Catholic school should get free transport when pupils at other schools don't. I know it's been there since 1969, 44 years, but that doesn't mean it's going to be there forever. Things change. If someone can explain to me why these people should get free transport, 08459 455 555. And if you pay for your kids to go on the bus, or your kids walk, or they ride their bikes, or you drive them to school, are you angry that these mums are getting so angry that their free bus transport has been cancelled? Love to hear from both sides of you. If you're upset that the free bus has been cancelled, 08459 455 555. Or, if like me, you're left scratching your head a little bit because you don't quite understand what all the fuss is about. 08459 455 555. It's getting feisty on Facebook and I love it. Play nice, but it's getting feisty. Andrea says, facebook.com/BBC3CR, by the way. Andrea says, if it was any other religion, the race card would have been used long before the ink was dry. The council have been racist to the Catholic religion. Well, that's not possible, but OK. The council have been racist to the Catholic religion, denying Catholic children the right to their choice of school to save money. Well, they're right. Their choice hasn't been denied, and you can't be racist towards a religion. Neil says, why as a taxpayer should I be subsidising someone else's choice on school? The council has better things to spend the money on. The Catholic Church has staggering levels of wealth and could easily pay for its own buses rather than expecting the rest of Luton people to pay for it. Dawn says, we shouldn't fund travel to any choice of school. I have to pay to get my kids to a school because I choose to take them out of catchment. As adults, we make choices in life. Why, when they think that others are going to pick up the bill if your choice is expensive? And on the text, 81333, Jen of Houghton Regis says, I used to get a train to school at the age of 15, then a bus from a 7, and by 11 years old was quite capable of the bus journey to grammar school. Why don't these parents drive their children to school if the kids are so unstreetwise? 08459 455 555. Philomena Caldwell. Good morning, Philomena. Philomena, where are you? Philomena, are you there? No, Philomena, we'll come to you in a little bit. You seem to have dropped off. Clementine's in Luton. Good morning, Clementine.
Hi.
Hi, Clementine. What's your take on this bus service being axed?
My children actually they don't go to Carden Newman, but the plan will be that they will eventually.
Yep.
And I just wanted to make the point that somebody's not actually said, is that do people realise that Carden Newman actually gets less funding than the other high schools? And that as parents, we make up the difference.
Why does it get less funding?
Because it's a Catholic faith school. And we as children, as parents, because we've chose to send our children there, we put in a minimum donation every term.
How much is that donation?
Well, it's just a minimum amount from us that we choose to give.
How much do you choose to give?
Well, the minimum will be about £15. I'm not sure of the exact figures.
15 quid?
But, yeah, each term.
Yeah, well, so how many terms are there? 3 terms?
Yeah, but it's still the point is it gets
45 quid.
A lot less funding than the other schools.
Well, Clementine.
Which no one seems to have been aware of.
I thought you were going to say a few hundred quid. 45 quid a year.
Well, it's that's a minimum. That's a minimum figure.
How much do you give?
Well, I don't want to say that.
Why?
Because I just choose not to say it.
Is it 15 quid?
It changes every month.
Right, okay.
It's more than that, but it's just the point that Carden Newman does get a lot less funding.
Okay, but why should you get free buses?
Well, it's not about the free buses, is it? It's about the safety of the children.
Why would they be... I'm confused. I thought it was about free buses. I thought that's what everyone was complaining about last night.
It is about the free buses, but if you think all these people decide that they don't want to send their children to their faith school...
Right.
And they decide, well, I don't want to do this.
Right.
And I want to send it to my local school.
Yeah.
Which could be Stocksea, Puttridge, anywhere like that.
Yeah.
The schools are going to be oversubscribed.
And you have the stats to back that up, do you?
No, I'm just saying that eventually people are going to think about that, aren't they?
Well, if the school's too far away for them and they can't afford for the transport, then yes. But why should I sort of understand why I should be paying for their transport?
Well, because it's just an agreement that's been in place for so long.
For 44 years, and things change.
And a lot of people are sending their children because they wanted to send their children to a Catholic school.
Okay. Clementine, I'm still... this thing about the agreement being... It's 1969 this was put in place, where the council said, yeah, we'll give you free transport. 1969! I wasn't even born when that agreement was put into place. A lot of those mums that are so angry weren't born when that was put into place. It's not a covenant etched in law that's going to be there forever. 08459 455 555. I'm struggling here. I'm really struggling, and I'm trying not to be argumentative or bullying or anything like that. I would love it if someone could call up and explain a better argument than, well, some of the schools will be oversubscribed, and it's been there since 1969. Surely, if you choose to send your child to a school that is some distance away from you, it's ultimately your responsibility to make sure that you can get that child to that school, whether it's by driving, whether it's by paying for their transport. That's your responsibility, isn't it, as a parent? 08459 455 555. Andrew in Leighton Buzzard has emailed. It seems like a reasonable situation to remove the funding from optional school transport. After all, the children affected are going to the school through choice, not through council allocation. Why are the schools not looking at providing the funding for the transport if it's so central to their pupils' well-being? The cost could be subsidised with the amount passed on to the parents, decided by the school and its governors. In Leighton Buzzard, the upper schools provide transport across town so that pupils can choose the school which suits their needs best. From the school's perspective, it's also a way to help increase headcount and ultimately, of course, funding. I must admit, I'm not aware of the funding arrangements for this transport, but it is school, not authority, organised. 08459 455 555 is the telephone number. Well, Dee Drennan has a child at the school, but she lives on Warden Hill, where the school is her main concern. Her main concern is the increase of traffic in the area. Morning, Dee. Explain your worries. Dee?
Hello?
Oh, you're there. Sorry, I joined the wrong fader. Explain your concerns, Dee.
Right. The school run time is busy for everybody at all schools. If the buses are withdrawn because they are not financially viable for Arriva to continue, then the people will have to drive their kids to school. There will be an increase of cars on the road. At no point did Luton Borough Council consult with residents. At no point did they come and ask me what the impact this would have on my family and other residents around me. There is only one way in and out of Warden Hill Road and Links Way and the golf course and the stables. If there was a fire or an ambulance required, that could have serious detrimental effects to someone's life. If there are hundreds of extra cars on the road and no way for these emergency services to get in and out.
How busy is... how long does the drop-off and pick-up time take at school? 20 minutes, half an hour?
Right. At the last drive to Newman Day on the 25th of March,
Yeah.
my daughter didn't make her swimming lesson because it took me 40 minutes to get out of my road.
OK, but you'd anticipate that if that was the daily situation. You could anticipate that, couldn't you, and leave earlier?
Why should my quality of life and what I do with my family be affected because the inadequacies of Luton Borough Council to effectively consult local residents and local emergency services? Why should my quality of life be affected by that?
So, but just I'm trying to work out how long is the drop-off? How long does it take for all the kids to be dropped off at school in the morning? Half an hour?
How long is a piece of string?
Well, I
it
know
depends on...
that you can actually answer this question, but there is... What time do people start dropping off their kids, and what time do they finish dropping off their kids?
Well, it could be any time from 8 o'clock round to about 8:45, I
So
suppose.
45 minutes?
Yes.
So, you're making it sound like it's going to be like that all day. It's not. It's going to be 45 minutes at the top of the day, 45 minutes at the end of the day. So your argument about the emergency services is slightly flawed.
No, it isn't slightly flawed, because at those times during the day, and it's not just my road, it's the A6, it's Leagrave Road, it's Barton Road, it's everywhere. On the day of the drive to Newman Day, traffic was at a complete standstill. Okay? I'm simply pointing out that, as far as I'm aware, Luton Borough Council didn't consult emergency services to find out what the impact would be on those services at those times of day.
Dee, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed. Well, it kicked off at a council meeting in Luton last night. It's kicking off on this show this morning as well. It's all because pupils and parents from Cardinal Newman Roman Catholic School started jeering from the public gallery of the town hall last night when the Borough Council announced that free transport for faith schools was to be scrapped. 08459 455 555. Got 10 minutes. 10 minutes. A lot of angry people this morning. Always happy to talk to angry people. Also, if you're on the other side, if you pay to get your kids to school anyway, you drive them to school, or they get the bus, and you have to pay for that, do you understand why these people are angry? Or are you sat there scratching your heads? A lot of people on Facebook this morning, facebook.com/BBC3CR. Well, here's Claire. My son goes to a school that's not in his catchment area, and we have to pay for his school bus. So why shouldn't they, if it's not their catchment school? There was another comment from Barbara. The only reason is the mums can put the kids on the free bus and get on with their lives. Now they'll have to put themselves out. Welcome to the real world. Patricia's in Luton. Patricia, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to a lot of the show this morning, and my concern is that the council are really making a short-term decision, because they're saying that by removing the denominational free transport now, my fear is that it's only going to move it into statutory free transport in the coming years. In 2014, 2015, every senior school place in Luton will be required, and I have the figures on that because the council provided them. And my concern is that children that would have gone to Cardinal and Newman School will now have no choice financially but to go to their more local community school within their catchment area. So it's going to displace a lot of children who then will be outside of the 3 mile zone, and the council will then have to statutorily pay their transport to get to school. So I think Hazel and her executive have made a very short-term decision, regardless of the consequences that are 2-3 years down the line, because they probably won't be in administration then because no one will vote them in. So my concern is that they are not making the decision based with a long-term view.
Do you have children at Cardinal Newman?
In 2 years' time, it was my intention for my children to go, but I would probably have to reconsider my school selection now because of the cost.
Barbara on Facebook raises a good point. Why don't the school and the parents all get together and pay for putting a school bus on the road yourselves?
Yeah, but the thing is, you've got to remember that Luton, a lot of people, if they're on free school meals, they will still get free transport. If they are a low-income family but are not entitled to benefits, they won't have the finances. And my husband and I both work, but £16 a week per child, and I have 2 children. That's just going to be financially unviable for us to continue.
Well, but what I'm saying is, if what Barbara is suggesting is, if the whole school got together and the parents got together, you could afford to pay for your own school bus, and it wouldn't be £16 a week per child, would it?
I think it would still be a high amount, even if it's £10 a week. That's a lot of money. I mean, children go to school for how many weeks a year? You know, that's still a lot of money to find for a family when you have, particularly if you have more than one child. So the reality is a lot of people will now have to go to their local community school. So it's going to displace the whole equilibrium of the admissions process of Luton. And I'm really, really disappointed and frustrated that Hazel and her executive have not even responded to parents' concerns and emails and letters. They've completely ignored them. So they're not listening to their voters. So this is a bigger impact, and it's far wider reaching. It's going to affect every senior school in Luton, not just Cardinal Newman. It's going to affect, so you're going to be talking to parents in a year's time who can't get their child into Barnfield South or who can't get their child into Chorley because parents that would have sent their children to Cardinal Newman can no longer afford to do so. So this has a huge impact across all of the secondary schools in Luton.
Patricia, thank you very much indeed. A good point, well made, thank you. 08459 455 555. Did this affect you? Your kids go to Cardinal Newman, are you furious? We did, lots of interesting points coming in on the Facebook. Sarah says, as a Catholic, I want to apologise for the absolute drivel coming from some people this morning. I attended a faith school when I lived in Luton. People need to wake up and make appropriate choices for their children. Just because they don't go to a faith school doesn't mean they don't have faith. I went to a comprehensive and still turned out okay. 08459 455 555. Kevin's from Milton Keynes. Morning, Kevin.
Morning.
What do you make about this? A lot of very angry mums this morning.
I don't see what the problem is. If they want people to go to a special school, then surely if it's out of their catchment area, like I had to in the 80s, you know, you have to walk or you have to take your own kids. And, you know, people want to send their kids to special schools and everything else, and they're moaning because they can't have free transport. Well, send them to a school where they don't need free transport.
Let's go through some of the arguments that have been raised this morning, Kevin. This agreement has been in place since 1969 that the council would supply free transport.
Right.
You're not buying that one?
Well, no, not really. I mean, people have got their different things that are important to them, haven't they? People who go to Cardinal Newman, they've got their kids' best interests. But to be fair, you know, half of them are saying, oh, yeah, we want to send their kids there because it's all faith. Well, faith and religion, it's the biggest problem this world faces. Everyone's all concerned about faith and doing things properly and this, that and the other. Are they forgetting that, pensioners are having things cut? Ambulance services and police forces are having things cut.
Debs makes a good point. She said one of the arguments is that the traffic is going to be terrible if all parents are driving their kids. Debs says, well, surely the parents will take turns in driving so there won't be one child in each car. Bit of car sharing goes a long way. Kevin, do you have any sympathy for these parents at all? I mean, Patricia was making a good point that this could throw off the equilibrium of the schools in the next couple of years, and that in the end the council will end up paying for free transport because lots of kids will be moved out of their catchment area.
Well, if they're out of their catchment area, then it's down to their parents to make sure that their kids get to school, isn't it? I mean, you can't just expect to go, oh, I want to go to this school and, oh, I need it to be free transport. That's not how we work in this day and age.
Kevin, thank you very much indeed. Giuseppe?
Hello?
Hello, yeah, what do you make about all of this?
I just think that it's completely outrageous what's going on, to be honest.
What, that they're getting rid of the bus?
Yes, definitely.
Why?
Well, because I went there for 5 years and I just, it all went according to plan. I've got a young in.
Yeah.
That's going to be going to the school and she's just not going to get what I got. I think it's completely unfair, and a lot of parents and children are going to be suffering. It's just completely outrageous.
Why should I pay for your sister to get the bus to school?
Because it's just principle.
Well, principles don't really work when the council has to make a saving of £45 million.
Sorry, say that again.
Principles don't really have much standing when the council has to save £45 million. I don't think it's fair that I should pay for your sister to get the bus to school when other students have to make their own way to school.
Well, I still think that...
OK, thank you very much. Let's go to Matt from Hitchin. Morning, Matt.
Morning.
Matt, we've got about 30 seconds. What do you think about this?
I think it's a bit unfair for the existing students, really, more than anything. Any changes like that, fair enough, taking away the free bus travel, but it should be brought in on future students rather than existing ones.
So you think it should be it should be phased out? So everyone that's there now will get free transport for the rest of their school time there, but any new students joining from September shouldn't get the free transport?
That's correct, yes. I mean, as you made a comment, you've sort of said fairly that any parent should be able to get their child to school. When they put the children in the school, obviously the funding was in place, they did have a method of getting them there. And it could seriously affect their education and their exams if they have to change into a different school syllabus.
Matt, thanks very much. Just ending there, because I want to get in one text from Sandra in Woburn. Everyone who chooses to live close to a school knows that in the morning and afternoon there'll be disruption from parents. I wholeheartedly agree that parents should pay for their own bus service. It was their own choice. Well, feisty morning. Again, I can only blame Adam Glynn.
Thanks for that. Very much appreciated. Brilliant. Adam Glynn, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Go to the Facebook page. The debate continues there.
Getting beds, hearts and bugs talking.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.